Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. This week could actually be a special episode. Instead of who, it's more what, with the addition of a who. But I'm bringing on one of the members of the Cardinal Practical Shooters to discuss the Buckeye Blast, Falling Steel, as well as the facilities that are hosting Carry Optics Nationals in June, as well as Iron Sight Nationals later in the year. Join me in welcoming to the show, Khory Katz. How you doing, Khory?
Good. How are you, Dave?
I'm well, thank you. Hope that intro was all right with you.
Love it. I've never gotten a standing ovation before, so.
A lot of people get it on this show. It's amazing.
Yeah.
To have you on more often, you get more standing ovations.
Well, sounds like a plan. No.
All right, go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Khory Katz. I am a competitive shooter in northeastern Ohio, so I'm just outside of Cleveland. I am kind of the co-match director or assistant to the match director for Buckeye Blast and all of the matches that we have at Cardinal, all the USPSA matches that we have at Cardinal. So Cardinal is a newer range to competitive practical shooting, pistols and rifles, USPSA stuff, but is a kind of an old range. They've got a ton of shotgun sports going on there too. So new to the USPSA and the pistol games, but not new to shooting at all.
Yeah, not to jump ahead, but it seems like that's where it got its start, and it looks like a huge shotgun range.
It's huge is an understatement.
Okay, all right. There we go. So you told me earlier that you're a listener, so you know there's some difficult questions coming your way.
I do.
All right. So we have to start with our usual. What's your favorite movie?
So I'm going to go with Holes, and the reason I'm going with Holes, it's a spinoff of a book, and it's an older one. And it's before all the drama from, all the politics and stuff like that got into the movie business and all that good stuff. So it's kind of an old standby, but I read the book and then watched the movie years ago and just doesn't have any of the politics.
What's the storyline?
Basically it's kind of it's a kids work camp that they were supposed to be digging holes, and that was their punishment for doing whatever crimes that they did. And what it turns out was they were actually looking for the warden's buried treasure that her father buried out there in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
So
interesting. What year was that made? Do you know? How old is that movie?
Great question. I think Holes, the movie, was made probably in the mid 2000s probably.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know when the book was written.
Okay, so not that old.
No.
And it's HOLES?
Yep.
All right, let's just do a quick we figure this 2003. There you go.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Brutal desert detention camp. Oof.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one. Not a fan of heat like that.
Me neither. Me neither at all.
All right. So does that mean Holes is your favorite book?
So, no. More recently, I listened to a lot of books on tape, going to matches, driving for work, stuff like that. And the Hieronymus Bosch series that John Grisham wrote is really interesting. Kind of a sucker for like procedurals and stuff like that, and crime shows and crime books, and so I'm a kind of like that genre, and John Grisham does a good job of writing about it.
Okay. You ever watch that TV show First 48?
I've not.
Oh, that's very interesting. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't actually.
I think it's A&E. It might be A&E. First 48 is when they're So there's a TV show. It's reality TV.
Okay.
But it's not staged. They go back and they interview detectives and whatnot. But a serious crime will occur, like a murder.
Hmm.
And what they say is the first 48 hours are the most critical.
Right.
The further beyond 48 hours you get, the harder it gets to determine who, committed the crime.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's a TV show just about all these different crimes in different places or around the country and stuff, and what they're doing in those first 48 hours.
Okay.
It's pretty
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I've got it on my notepad. So
There you go. Yeah. Sounds like it'd be right up your alley.
yeah.
So I don't know if you're into superheroes or not, but if you are, who would be your favorite?
So I'm not really into superheroes.
Okay.
But I wrote down a famous person. All right. I was thinking about a famous
I'm
person.
down with that.
And that would be George Washington for a couple reasons.
He's kind of
No,
famous, yeah.
he's sort of famous, heard of him once.
Yeah.
Two reasons. Number one, I don't think we would be here today, whether it's on this podcast or talking about shooting, for sure, without George Washington and his band of colleagues. Number two, I'm a Mason. I'm a Freemason, and George Washington is probably the most famous Freemason.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of conspiracies around you guys too, just so you know.
I've heard one or two.
And I speaking of George Washington for a minute, because I live about 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour drive from his home,
Mm-hmm.
Mount Vernon. And it was interesting. And I've been up there several times, but I think the one thing that keeps drawing me back to him was his whole view on politics. He felt as president, he should only do his 4 years and then go back into private business.
Yep.
That's it. You go, you serve what little time you're supposed to serve, and then you get out of that and go back into the private sector and go on your merry way.
Yeah, it kind of aligns to my thought process on holes is, keep politics out of politics. And, if you're going back into your private life after you serve the public good,
Yes.
you're really not doing that for political reasons, for political gain. You're doing that because that's what you feel is best for the rest.
Absolutely agree. If you're just staying in that whole urn of nonsense, then it's obviously you're not actually there to help. It's all personal gain.
Yep.
All right. How about your favorite gun and caliber? And they don't have to be married together.
Yeah. So 9mm is a pretty simple choice for that one for me. I just think it's super versatile, and it's really at this point what USPSA is built around. Because as much as people don't want to say it, 40s going by the wayside. 9mm and maybe 38 Super Comp, but you're even seeing a lot more 9 major guns coming out too. And then I'm personally have shot a lot of PCC, so I'm going to go with a Franken gun PCC, which is my go-to. And has been pretty much since PCC came out in USPSA.
What are you running for an optic on that?
Seymour slide ride.
Okay. All right.
And then I'm
Now,
running the Shields buffer system, which is who I'm kind of supported by. It's a roller buffer system, kind of like it's moving the idea of the JP5 back into the buffer, and it is supposed to delay the bolt from opening, pushes more gas out the front of the gun, which reduces dot movement.
Okay. Interesting. Imagine there's even less felt recoil then.
Yeah, so it does reduce a little bit of felt recoil, really reduces the dot bounce.
Right.
And then also keeps your gun a lot cleaner. When I first put it in, I wasn't expecting that, but PCC is a pretty dirty running gun, especially when you're running dirty powder. So I run Tight Group, which is a pretty dirty powder. And it seems to keep the gun quite a bit cleaner.
That's interesting. I would have never guessed that. Now, you said you felt that 40 is going away. Why do you say that?
If you just look, I mean, so there's realistically one division that still uses 40, and that 40 is still competitive in, which is limited.
Right.
And if you look at the limited major crop of shooters, every year that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Whether they're going to carry optics or they're going to open or now production optics, maybe, like I think that pool of shooters is getting smaller and smaller.
All right. So because you guys opened up a new division in Buckeye Blast, when we get there, we're going to talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right. So when did you first start shooting? Have you always grown up in Ohio?
So always grew up in Ohio. It's kind of funny. My mom, was a school teacher. She's retired now, but she was a school teacher, and she never wanted guns in the house. I mean, to the point where when I was young and I was in the squirt gun age, she wouldn't let me have squirt guns because guns were bad. I think she had like a squirt dinosaur that she gave me to go fight my friends with squirt guns. So back in I think it was 2009, my dad finally got his first gun when I was old enough to know, hey, don't touch this if they say that I'm not supposed to, that type of thing. And that's when we both started shooting, and we slowly waded our way into competitive shooting from there. And then now all three of us shoot. So both my parents shoot custom open guns, and I shoot PCC.
Wait a minute. Your mom shoots?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom's actually a NRA USCCA CCW instructor.
What? All right. How do you get your mom to go from the NEA poster child of I'm anti-gun to open and all of that?
So she's always been pretty on board with doing with going with my dad and I to stuff that we enjoyed. And so before we were shooting, we were showing dogs. And the family went out. We had a camper. We'd go out every weekend to a dog show. And at a certain point, my dad stopped when we realized that we were planning the dog show schedule around where the shooting matches were. My dad realized that, hey, maybe we should just go and find a shooting match and skip the dog showing. So my mom went with us a couple times, started pasting for us. And she was the range mom, which was a lot of fun. And
Cool.
then we kept saying hey, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll go shooting. I'm not going to go compete, but I'll go shoot with you guys. Well, one thing leads to another. My dad buys her a competition gun and a belt and a rig and everything, mainly because he wanted a new gun. So that, things happen. And now, my mom got the first open gun because he wanted a new gun. So now they have a matching set. Well, not a matching set, but a set of open guns for each other. And we have a lot of fun. So I shoot a lot of the majors. They typically only shoot locals. But it is kind of crazy how we go from, she was very anti-gun to she's a Second Amendment supporter. Like every class that she starts, she talks about the Second Amendment, and she makes a point of making everybody stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So,
Wow.
True patriot.
That's like a 180-degree turn.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, how did you guys go from not having shot? Your dad finally gets a gun for you guys to be able to go shoot. How did you stumble across competition shooting?
So the gentleman that taught us to shoot is a guy by the name of Greg Schaefer. And we knew him because his wife showed dogs. He was in the shooting in the shooting realm. So when she found out that my dad was looking for a gun, she hooked us up with her husband.
Okay.
And Greg, at one point, was aligned with Matt Burkett and ended up bringing the what at that point was Predator Tactical back into Ohio and started Champion Precision Firearms. So Greg's been in the sport for a long time. His son's in the sport as well. And we started out just learning how to shoot, and then we took a Matt Burkett class, and we kind of got into shooting off of that. One time Greg said, "Hey, come out and watch me shoot." The next time my dad's like, "Okay, I'm coming out and shooting with you." And then the third time he's like, "Khory, you should come out too."
All right.
So the funny part is my first competition gun was an STI Edge. So it was comical that we just skipped the whole like production area. We just went straight to the good, to the fun guns.
Yeah.
So
there was no production in your shooting.
No, we had a Glock. We had a Glock for a little while, and my dad's like, "Yeah, I don't really like this. It doesn't have any character. It's just a plain old black gun." We're like, "Yeah, let's get stuff with character."
Okay. Now, what year was your first competition?
I want to say 2011, but I could be wrong with that.
Okay.
I mean, it was relatively recently. Might have even been later than that.
But it also wasn't that far after him getting his first gun.
No, it was pretty quick. I mean, even when there was probably a little while where we were just not shooting USPSA, so we were shooting like bowling pins and stuff like that at local ranges, and we got to know other people that were involved in the competition shooting, kind of on the peripherals, if you will.
I take it then limited was your first division, and then PCC when it opened up in, what was that, 2017, I think it was?
Yeah, so I actually joined USPSA in 2014.
Okay.
So limited was my first division, and then my first PCC classifier was back in like 2018. So a year after PCC became
a thing,
legal.
And what classification are you with the PCC?
I'm a master shooter in PCC.
Okay. What about limited?
Well, so being a master in PCC makes me an A in limited, but realistically, I'm probably like a C in limited.
Okay, but you've obviously put some time in with the PCC, so
yeah. A couple of years ago, and still, I shoot quite a bit. So this is probably, since Nationals, has probably been the longest time where I haven't picked up a gun since I started shooting.
So you took an off season then?
I took an off season from shooting. I have not taken an off season from USPSA because, well, assistant match directing is a lot of work.
So, right. You've been doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff, just nothing actually with the rifle in your hand shooting.
Yeah, I've probably shot 25 rounds since National in October.
Okay. I think I've fired 100, so I'm a little bit just not far ahead of you though.
Yeah.
Shoot, I should have written the question down. But I know what it was. So I was talking to Matt Hopkins recently.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've listened to that episode because you said you listened, but I said I would like to see a PCC Nationals where you test the gun and the shooter. And I said, like 75 yard through a port, tuxedo target, but it would be your option. You'd have a way to rest it if that's what you wanted to do. Obviously, there'd be options there. But what are your thoughts on more difficult targets at range for PCC? For, against, neutral?
So I'm relatively neutral. Maybe even leaning towards against. And the reason I say that is the way the PCC has built up in this sport is we're shooting a rifle at a pistol match. So to look at that and say, okay, at nationals, you're shooting a rifle at a rifle match. But in comparison, at all your other matches that you shoot, you're shooting a rifle at a pistol match. It's kind of disjoint. It would be slightly disjointed. So if we were IPSC, and IPSC runs PCC separately typically from pistol matches, they have their PCC and minigun league kind of separate from handgun. That would be fine, because then we're running separate PCC matches. But that's just me. I mean, I enjoy shooting.
And I should clarify that too, because I don't mean like every stage either. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just mean like interspersed. Like if you have say a 24 stage nationals, then you might have 4 stages where you have a 75-yard shot, 75-yard shot. You know what I mean? Or a 75-yard target. So kind of like 2020 at Frostproof with Khory Optics Nationals, where they had the 42-yard target out there. You know.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, 2020 was ended up being a standalone nationals. Wasn't that right? Back to back with PCC was standalone back to back with multi-gun and Frostproof. Is that 19? It may have been.
That might have been 19, because 2020 it was Khory Optics and production.
Okay.
So you had production shooters engaging a 42-yard target.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine. Like last year was PCC and production, and some of those stages wiped me out as a PCC shooter, and yet production shooters were killing it. So there's some challenges that are not necessarily shooting challenges that are inherent with a long gun that production shooters don't have to worry about, or handgun shooters don't have to worry about. Navigating through tight wall positions is something we have to consider that a handgun doesn't. So I think they're relatively evenly matched. Other than optic versus irons, I think that's a bigger differentiator than pistol versus rifle.
I would agree. Yeah, I could even see where, what was it? It was last year, Khory Optics Nationals. I'm trying to remember if PCC shot with open last year.
So in 2022, PCC shot with production. Because it was supposed to be the 4-gun nats in Colorado, and then that got moved.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, and now I'm wondering. No, I had it right. Yeah. So I could see where what I was getting at is they had the tunnel. The last stage at Khory Optics Nationals was a tunnel. And that would have been tight if you had a PCC, because you go halfway through the tunnel and there's a port on each side, low port. So you're shooting out of one side and then shooting out of the other.
Yeah, it's hard because people say, oh, PCC is the reason why we don't have Cooper tunnels anymore. PCC is the reason why we don't have doors anymore. It's not, it shouldn't be a stopper. It shouldn't be the reason why we don't have these props anymore. But there are some match directors out there and some stage designers that say, hey, I can never ask the PCC to open a door. I do it all the time. I'm fortunate where I live in an area that we have a couple high-level stage builders and match directors that there's a match that I go to that there's probably a door in there every other month. And yet there's other matches that I don't see, that they haven't had a door since PCC came out.
So it's really the comfort of whoever the match director is.
Yeah, you just have to know how to navigate it. As a competitor and a stage designer, you just have to know A, how to set it up, B, how to navigate it. I'm a left-handed PCC shooter, so I come to the stage, every stage I go to, completely different than 90% of the rest of the field. Because I have to make sure that my hand's out of the way when I open the door.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You are a very small percentage.
Yeah.
One PCC and then second a lefty. Holy cow.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I just
But then
wanted
again,
to.
it's funny because I'll walk up to a stage and look at it the exact opposite that you would if you were running a PCC. And sometimes I look at it and say that's a better stage plan. And then the rest of the squad follows me and says, "Oh yeah, you're right. That is a better stage plan that I would never have looked at if you weren't on the stage." And sometimes they're even. Sometimes it makes more sense for me to go the opposite direction.
Now, I assume you primarily look at it like back when you were shooting limited, whichever way gives you. I imagine you would look at wanting to reload running from right to left, whereas I prefer reloading going from left to right.
Yeah, I mean I don't reload too often,
Well, no, not with
but
PCC, but maybe in
yeah.
limited
So
you did.
I always want to run if I'm doing any distance running. I want to run from right to left because then the gun is across my body rather
Correct.
than the gun being out.
Right. Whereas I'm the exact opposite. So
Right.
I could see where you would walk through the stage going that direction first,
Yep.
whereas I do the opposite. All right. So in 2014, 2011, you shoot your first.
It was probably 2014 that I shot my first. I
Ma-
probably got. I probably ended up getting my USPSA membership right about the same time I
membership.
shot my first match.
Okay. Now, at what point after 2014 did you decide you wanted to become more involved locally with the matches?
So 2014, I graduated high school. I'm 27 years old. So 2014, I graduated high school. 2018, I graduated college. I think it was probably somewhere in that general vicinity, somewhere after my junior or senior year, that I really said, okay, I've got time and I've got a little bit of extra cash from my college job. Hey, I'm going to actually get into this and shoot a bit more. So I was probably shooting every weekend in over the summer. And then once I graduated school and I became an RO one of the last couple weeks of the summer of 2017. And then once I graduated school and was out making adult money, it's a lot
Right.
easier to go travel and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not eating ramen at college?
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
still eating ramen, but just spending more money
Right.
on shooting.
Instead of school.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. Okay.
So
What'd you get your degree in?
I'm a financial advisor, so I was in insurance and sales.
Okay. So you knew you were going down the wrong route of finances with shooting, but you did it anyway.
Oh yeah, but it's a lot of fun. It was worth it.
Right. It's a cash magnet.
Oh,
So
it is. It can be.
how you said earlier that Cardinal Practical Shooters is relatively young.
Hmm.
How long has Cardinal Practical Shooters been around?
So, Cardinal Practical Shooters was founded in 2022.
Whoa.
Yeah, so this is only we're coming up on our second year of running USPSA matches there.
Wow. Okay. Were they how wow, that's I don't even know how to phrase the question, but we'll try this again.
Why are you guys so
How,
crazy? No.
well, I mean, how do you get a group of guys to come together and go, "Hey, let's hold a match over here," where there hasn't been a match
Yeah,
before?
so Ohio is a very strong competitive shooter landscape. We've got enough clubs that we have two sections in Ohio, which is not common. Ohio's not a huge state either. So we've got two sections in Ohio. We've got, I think, 13 or 15, somewhere in the teens number of clubs in the state of Ohio. but nothing in Columbus. And we always knew that that was a range that we were interested in, but nothing was down there. So a guy named Don Bates from Buckeye Speed Shooters went in and organized the first steel challenge match at Cardinal. And with that steel challenge match, he primed us to be able to talk to the Cardinal leadership and say, hey, we want to do USPSA here too. So it was a group effort between Rick Steele, the Area 5 director, and Scott Beebe, the section coordinator in Northern Ohio, and then Don Bates and Dan Click and I.
How open were they to that?
Initially, not very open at all, and that goes back a long time ago. But more recently, they've been very open. At some point, someone out there put a goal that they wanted to host as many national events as possible for as many different shooting disciplines as possible. So it's taken them a couple iterations to get there for pistol, but they're finally able, we're finally in a position where they've got the right type of bays coming in and the right type of bays. They've got the right people involved, and we're hitting the ground running.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.